Okay, well, people are wondering how to have full control over their Google Meets and make sure that nobody uh, ends them early, or you can keep control of your recording when it's done. So normally when you use this little Meet link at the top of Google Classroom, you basically don't get that stuff. Whoever gets there first, I think, is usually who ends up having control over that. So you basically lose all control of the meeting. Somebody else can end it early. You don't have complete access to your recordings and everything like that. There's a workaround for that. The easiest way to do it, the fastest shortcut, is when you come into Google Meet here. If you just start a new meeting and you do like create a meeting for later, you could do that and then just take this information here, this meet.google. And it's really this second part right here that you see. This is your Meet info, this GXO or whatever this is here. That's what you want to use. So one thing you could do so that you have control of this is just copy that information, and for creating a new meeting, maybe it's for a specific class, so you could come back into Google Meet and maybe announce something to your class, copy that information in there, and that could just be your Google Meet for that from then on out. Thing is, though, you got to go in here and make sure. I'm going to cancel this because I already got mine set up differently. You have to go in here and make sure that you turn off this Meet link. And the easy way to do that is under Settings up in the right corner here. If you scroll down a little bit to where you get to the Meet stuff, where it says Visible to Students, you just make sure that's clicked off and they can't see that anymore. So they don't have any way of clicking on that and joining the Meet in the wrong way. So again, going back in here, I'm just going to discard those changes. If you look at this here, this Google Meet, that little I there with a line through it, not visible to students. So they can't see that anymore. But yeah, in here in this announcement, you could make an announcement. And by the way, when you make an announcement in Google Classroom, anybody that's part of that class, they get an email with an update saying, hey, teacher just made an announcement or whatever. So they'll see this here. So if you just want to say something like, use the following Google Meet, blah, 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 for your class. That may be the shortest way of taking control of it. And you should be able to use that every single time, as long as they go and click on it, or click on it at the appropriate time for your class. That's kind of the most important piece of this. So that's the fastest way to have full control over it, because you are the originator. Again, that goes back into here when you click into when you're in Google Meet. If you click on New Meeting, create a meeting for later, that's the way to do it. The other way of doing this is in a new meeting and schedule it in Google Calendar. So if you schedule it in Google Calendar, so here I'll just give you an example here. It brings up all the kind of optional information that you can add. Another way I like to do this, and this is my method for doing these, is I just set up a calendar invite for my students, and I put it on my calendar here. So let's say next Monday is our first class. So I'll click here, and this is my AP Calc class during first period. So I'll just put AP Calc first period, and I'm going to go in here and I want to add some more options to this. So you get this other screen here that gives you some different options to do. So I want to make sure the time is correct. Time is 8 o'clock to 8:35 technically. So I'm going to put 8:35 a.m. in there. Okay. And it starts April 12th, but I want it to repeat. Also, I want to add, this is kind of a big piece, make sure you add Google Meet video conferencing. That's imperative if that's what you want this to do. So I'm going to add Google Meet to this so they can join with Google Meet. It's got the code and everything in here. I'll show you how to share that with everybody here in a second. But I want this to repeat. It's only going to be for just for 1 week, hopefully. So I'm going to go in here to custom, and I want it to repeat on just the weekdays here. So I'm going to click Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I want it to end on the end of that week. So not July. Why is it in July? I want it to end. We come back on the 12th here. So I want it to end on the 16th. So it's just going those 5 days, and it'll stop after that. It won't show up on my calendar. Okay, so I'll hit done. Okay, so right now that's the way this thing's going to look. So I'm going to go in here. I'll just show you, and it's got all the normal stuff here, notifications and everything else here. And I'll hit save, and notice it shows up 8 to 8:35 every single one of those days. Now, how do you share that with your students, though? Because this will show up for you if you go into your Google Meet tab here at meet.google.com, making sure you're logged into your account. It'll actually give you a list of all your classes for that particular day. It won't show up unless it's on that day, which is kind of nice. You never have to leave this page to join the Google Meet. But let's go back over in here. If I did want to share this with everybody, I'll go back into edit the event. So one way to do it is I can just copy this conference info, okay? And then just go back into this class here, or into my Google Meet, or sorry, Google Classroom class, and actually just cut and paste that information in there, and they can just click on it that way if you put it in like an announcement. And they should get updates with that again through email. The other way to do it, though, is you can actually add guests to this. So I created basically a contact group for my Calc class. So if I go in here, I just type Calc in. There's AP Calc first period. So I just click on that, adds all these guests. These are all the kids in that class. And if I want to have David Evans in there too, he wants to have access to all these, I can add him as well. And now when I go and hit save, it's going to send, it's going to edit it first of all. So I want to edit this and following events. You won't have to do that if you did this right off the bat. So I'm going to hit OK, but it's also going to ask if I want to send invitations to these guests. So yes, I'm going to do that. So now all my students are going to get an email saying, hey, you've been invited. I got a calendar invite like you guys are used to seeing. And now it shows up on their calendar, which is kind of nice because they have it on their calendar. And also when they go into their Google Meet, they'll see it listed in there as well. So they actually be able to see all the classes they have for that day, at least the ones they have a Google calendar invite for, with a Google Meet with it. Now here's the other cool thing about that. So the last thing about this, I'll go back into to the Google Calendar. I'm going to scroll back a little bit so I can show you what things look like. This is, let me just show the classes here. These are my classes right here. If you look at this, these are the last 3 days of school, week ago. And you can see all my classes are on here. So I click on this, it pops up some information about it. Let me squeeze that down again. It pops up some information about it. So you can see everything that was on here, join with Google Meet, all that stuff. I want to show you too that this same thing here, this Google Meet code KYP, etc., it's the same one on each one of these. So once you create that event and you repeat it, it's the same code on each, which is kind of handy. But here's the other thing. Notice that when I click on this, there's this little thing right here. If you remember to record your Google Meets, those actually will show up here. It'll be an attachment on that particular day. So if I click on this, it actually pops up the recording for the Google Meet for that day. Okay, so if you want to see all that,
in two ways. There's going to be multiple algorithms.
So that's also an excellent way for you to be able to find access, or you to be able to access your old recordings and what things you covered on a particular day, but also that shows up on the students' Google Calendar. So they can just go to whatever day it was and they want to see, and they're like, okay, Honors Algebra 2, click on that. Oh, there's a recording for that day. I missed that day. I want to go back and watch it. And they can see it. That's a pretty cool thing. The only thing about that, you might have noticed that I'll go back into I'll just click on one of these and do a modify. I added all these names in here, but I added the guest using just a pre-made group of my contacts. Okay. Now, if you don't have that, you can add them all individually, but that's kind of a pain in the rear, especially to do that every single time. So my recommendation to you, and take care of this, it'll take you like an hour. You do it at the beginning of the year, saves a lot of time. In Google Contacts here, and you can get into Google Contacts if you hit the little square of dots up there. Contacts is in there. It might not be in the same place as what I have it, but it should be in there. click on contacts, it brings you in here, and I make these labels for the different classes. So if you want to like create a new group, so if I go in here and I say, okay, I want Caden and Campbell to be in, or Claire Campbell to be in a certain group, what I can do here is I can actually create labels or add them to labels. So I'll just bring this labels thing down here again. If I create a label and I just say, you know, I don't care what it is, let's just say it's Bubba label, and I want to add these guys to a label, I can go over here and say, let's do this here. I can go over here and click on this more actions thing over here and say, I want to add these guys to a label. I'm going to add these to my Bubba label. Okay. And let's add Claire also to the Bubba label. Add her to Bubba. Okay. So now if I go over here and click Bubba, there they are. Cool. All right. And the nice thing about that is now when I go back over into Google Calendar and I type in Bubba, I might not have updated here yet. I might have to hit a refresh. But it should show up there as one of my groups. There it is, Bubba, 2 people in it. And I can click on that and they'd be added to that as well. I don't want to do that. This is an old one anyhow. But setting up your Google contacts with groups or labels in this case, super duper handy. I'm going to get rid of that Bubba one. Keep all contacts, delete this label, yes. But you notice I got it for Algebra 2, second period, third period, there's a first period AP Calc, and so on. Got them all in there. Easy to switch. If kids switch between classes, it's easy to move them around with that or delete them from one and add them to the other. But I highly recommend adding a little, taking an hour to do that kind of housekeeping at the beginning of the year, or do it now if possible. It makes life a lot easier in the long run.